Hello guys and welcome to Contour series. In the earlier tutorial, we learned three approaches to include lifecycle methods or callbacks in Spring project. Now in this tutorial, we will learn an important concept in Spring, and that is a BeanPostProcessor. A BeanPostProcessor, as its name indicates, is simply a class which allows you to modify a Beans instance or perform any task once it is created or initialized by Spring container. In simple words, you write a certain piece of code in a BeanPostProcessor and Spring executes this piece of code after initializing each and every bean provided in Spring's configuration file. Say you have 10 bean definitions in Spring configuration file, then for 10 times this common piece of code will be executed by Spring framework. And that's all about a BeanPostProcessor. Now in what situations you wish to provide a custom logic after beans initialization, and how is it different from init lifecycle event of a bean? Everything about a BeanPostProcessor we will walk through with this demo. So this is what we performed in the earlier tutorial while going through lifecycle events. We wrote a test class, a restaurant class, and Spring's configuration file. In the restaurant class, we provided two methods, init and destroy. And here in Spring's configuration file with init method attribute and destroy method attribute, we just let Spring framework know that we have written init and destroy methods in restaurant class, which are to be considered as lifecycle events or callbacks. Now what we will do is we will write a common code using a BeanPostProcessor, which will be called after every bean's initialization by Spring container. So for this, what we need is simply write a separate class implementing a BeanPostProcessor interface. So let's do that. Go to the package and click on new class. Give a name to this class, demo BeanPostProcessor. Alright, so this is the class which Eclipse has created for us. Now we got to implement BeanPostProcessor in this class. BeanPostProcessor. Alright, so this is giving error because we haven't yet implemented the methods provided by this interface. Let's do that. So these are the two methods which we have implemented from the BeanPostProcessor interface. This method will be called after a bean is initialized completely by Spring as per its definition in Spring's configuration file, but before init lifecycle event for that bean. And this method will be called just after init lifecycle event for that bean. If you observe here, both methods provide two arguments to us. One is the actual bean instance and the other one is the bean name, which means the methods will provide you an access to actual bean instance for which Spring has called these two methods. So actual bean instance is provided to you in these two methods. You do whatever you wish to do with this bean instance, like modifying any of its property you provided in its bean definition in Spring's configuration file, or simply set any of its additional properties with its setter methods, or any other task like loading of data from some remote server or a JMS queue. Any task which you wish to perform here with the bean instance, and in the end just return this modified bean instance back in both functions. So let's do that. So this is the actual bean instance, so replace this null with the bean instance. Practically, you can write any piece of code in these two functions. One method will be called before init lifecycle event and the other will be called after init lifecycle event of a bean instance. But the most recommended usage of a BeanPostProcessor is to just extend or override the definition of a bean provided in the Spring's configuration file by modifying the bean instances. Let's provide SOPs in both the functions. Alright, so we have provided here. So when we would execute this program, it will print processing bean instance before initialization, which means after Spring instantiates bean and before init lifecycle event of this bean. And here it will print processing bean instance after initialization. That is, this method will get executed just after init lifecycle event of the bean for which this method is going to execute. So our BeanPostProcessor class is ready. Now let's put its entry in the Spring's configuration file. Go to the Spring's configuration file and put its entry with this syntax. So here with this entry, you are telling Spring Framework that there is some class written in Spring project which is implementing a BeanPostProcessor, and Spring needs to execute the functions written in it after every bean's initialization. So the demo for BeanPostProcessor is ready. Let's go to the test class and run the application. Here the output clearly shows that Spring called two methods which are written in demo BeanPostProcessor class before and after init lifecycle event for the restaurant bean. Now there is an important point you should know about a BeanPostProcessor. You can write any number of BeanPostProcessor classes in your Spring project and provide the order in which Spring executes all after every bean's initialization. We will explore it in depth in our next tutorial.
Guys, thanks for liking our tutorials and providing feedback to us through emails and comments. Believe me, your comments and feedback is really valuable to us. Do like this video if you really like it, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to get all updates on latest video tutorials and programming stuff.